I watched my sister, Mia, zip up the back of my $5,000 silk wedding gown. Her eyes were tearing up in the mirror. "You're the most beautiful bride, Elena," she whispered. Her voice trembled with what I used to think was sisterly love. In the garden below, the man I'd loved for 3 years, Caleb, was adjusting his tie. He looked like the hero of every romance novel I'd ever read. To anyone else, this was the wedding of the year. To me, it was a crime scene. Most brides carry a bouquet of flowers. I was carrying a legal folder that would strip my husband-to-be of his dignity and my sister of her future. They thought they were marrying me into a trap. They didn't realize I'd already locked the door from the outside. My story isn't one of grand gestures. It's a story of quiet, hard work. I spent my entire 20s working 2 jobs. One as a junior architect during the day, and another doing freelance interior rendering at night. I didn't go on vacations. I didn't buy designer bags. I lived in a cramped studio apartment, eating ramen and saving every single dollar. My goal was simple. I wanted to buy back my grandmother's old coastal estate, a house our family had lost when my father passed away. It was more than just bricks and mortar. It was my heritage. When I met Caleb 3 years ago at a gallery opening, he felt like the reward for all that struggle. He was a, quote, freelance investment analyst, or so he claimed. He was patient, kind, and seemed to value my ambition. "I've never met a woman as driven as you, Elena," he'd tell me over candlelit dinners. "I want to be the partner who helps you build your empire, not the one who stands in its way." I fell for it. I fell for the way he listened to my dreams, the way he seemed to take notes on my financial goals. I thought he was invested in me. I didn't realize he was just auditing his next target. The red flags weren't red at first. They were a dull, dusty pink. About a year into our relationship, my sister Mia lost her job. She had always been the sensitive one, the one who struggled to keep her life together while I was the rock. Caleb was the one who suggested she move in with us once we bought the estate. "She's family, Elena," Caleb said, stroking my hair as we looked at the blueprints of the house I'd finally saved enough to buy. "Once we're married, the estate will be our sanctuary. Mia can help with the gardens, and she won't have to worry about rent." It felt noble. I felt like we were building a family unit. But then, things started to change. I noticed Caleb and Mia spent a lot of time whispering in the kitchen. Whenever I walked in, the conversation would stop. Caleb started complaining about my workaholic nature. He'd say things like, "You're so stressed with the estate renovations. Maybe you should let me handle the legal paperwork. I have a friend who's a notary. He can speed up the title transfer so it's in both our names before the wedding." He framed it as a way to protect me. In reality, he was trying to get his name on the deed of a house he hadn't contributed a single cent toward. The real blow came 6 days ago. I was using Caleb's laptop because mine had a crashed hard drive. He was in the shower, and a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It was an email from a real estate agent I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Pre-listing for the coastal estate." My blood went cold. Why would there be a pre-listing for my grandmother's house? We hadn't even moved in yet. I clicked it. I know I shouldn't have, but my gut was screaming. The email wasn't just about a listing. It was a thread between Caleb and Mia. I scrolled back. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an icy hand. "She's so predictable," Caleb had written to my sister 3 weeks ago. "Once the marriage license is filed, the house becomes a marital asset. My lawyer says that since she's using her business funds to pay for the renovations, I can claim a 50% stake immediately. We'll list it for $1.2 million, take the cash, and move to the city. Elena can have her little architecture firm, but we'll have the capital to start our own firm, the one we talked about." Mia's reply was what broke me. I almost feel bad for her. "She works so hard, but she's always looked down on us, Caleb. She thinks she's better because she has the career. It's time she shared the wealth. Just make sure she signs the joint property agreement during the reception toast. She'll be too drunk on champagne to read the fine print." I sat there in the silence of our bedroom, the steam from Caleb's shower whistling in the background. I looked at the photos on the wall. Us at the beach, us at Christmas, us at Mia's birthday. It was all a lie. Caleb didn't love me. He was a professional parasite. He had targeted me because I was successful, lonely, and had a valuable asset. And my sister, my own flesh and blood, was helping him rob me because she was jealous of a success I had bled for. I realized then that Caleb's investments were fake. I did a quick search on the company he claimed to work for. It didn't exist. He had been living off my earnings for the last year, claiming he was reinvesting his commissions into our future. He wasn't an analyst. He was a con artist. I didn't confront them. If I did, they would flee, or worse, find a way to sue me for emotional distress, or some other legal loophole they'd spent months researching. No. I needed this to be absolute. I called my lawyer, a woman who had been my mentor for years. We spent the next 72 hours in a war room setting. We didn't just look at the house, we looked at everything. I found out Caleb had forged my signature on several loan applications. He was trying to take out a second mortgage on the estate before we even moved in. What do you want to do, Elena? My lawyer asked. We can call the police now. No, I said, staring at the wedding invitation on her desk. I've paid for this wedding. Every flower, every plate of salmon, every bottle of wine. If I'm paying for a performance, I want the best seat in the house for the finale. I made 3 moves. First, I moved all my business assets into a private trust that no marriage could ever touch. Second, I contacted the notary Caleb mentioned. Turns out, the guy wasn't a notary. He was a disgraced former law clerk. I gave him an ultimatum: cooperate with me or go to jail for fraud. He chose to cooperate. Third, I changed the wedding programs. Now, the morning has arrived. I am standing here in this white dress, feeling like I'm wearing armor. Mia is bustling around the room, acting like the perfect maid of honor. She keeps checking her phone, probably texting Caleb about the big payday coming tonight. You okay, Elle? She asks, coming up behind me. You're so quiet. I'm just thinking about legacy, Mia, I say, my voice as steady as a heartbeat, about how hard it is to build something and how easy it is for people to try and steal it. She pauses, a flicker of guilt crossing her face before she masks it with a smile. Well, today you don't have to worry about that anymore. You have Caleb now. He's going to take care of everything. Oh, I know he is, I whisper. He has no idea how much he's going to take care of. The music starts. A slow, acoustic version of First Day of My Life. It's ironic, really. My father's best friend, Mr. Harrison, takes my arm. He thinks he's walking me toward a beginning. I know I'm walking Caleb toward an end. As I step out into the garden, I see the guests. Our friends, my colleagues and Caleb's associates, who I now know are just his creditors and drinking buddies he's lied to. Caleb is standing under the floral arch. He looks triumphant. He looks like a man who just won the lottery. He reaches out his hand as I reach the altar. His fingers are cold. The priest begins. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Elena and Caleb. I look at Caleb. He's staring at me with such devotion that I almost admire his acting skills. I look at Mia, who is standing right behind me, holding my train. The priest reaches the part about the vows. Caleb, do you take Elena? Wait, I say, my voice ringing out across the quiet garden. The priest stops. The guests stir. Caleb's smile falters, just a fraction. Elena? Everything okay? Everything is perfect, Caleb, I say, turning to face the audience. But before we exchange vows, I have a special gift for my groom and my maid of honor, a tribute to the real partnership that brought us here today. I point to the back of the garden, where a large projector screen, meant for our childhood slideshow, is being lowered. I think it's time we showed everyone the plans for the estate, I say. Caleb's face turns the color of ash. He looks at Mia. Mia looks at the screen. The slideshow starts, but it's not photos of us at the beach. It's a high-resolution screenshot of the email Caleb sent to Mia about selling the house. The garden goes deathly silent. You can hear the wind rustling through the trees. Caleb's hand drops from mine. The image on the screen changes to the forged loan documents with his signature circled in red. The guests start to murmur. My lawyer stands up from the front row, holding a briefcase. I lean into the microphone on the altar. Caleb, you told me you wanted to take care of everything, I say, my voice echoing. So, I've made sure you have a lot to take care of, starting with the 2 detectives waiting at the entrance. Caleb looks at the gate. 2 men in suits are walking toward us. He looks at me, his eyes bulging with panic and a sudden, ugly rage. You think you're so smart? He growls, stepping toward me. But I don't flinch. I have 200 witnesses and a live-streamed recording of his reaction. I don't think I'm smart, Caleb, I say. I'm an architect. I know when a foundation is rotten. And I know exactly how to tear it down. The garden, which moments ago was filled with the soft sounds of a string quartet, was now so silent you could hear the waves crashing against the cliffs below. The giant screen behind me was a glowing indictment, casting a cold blue light over Caleb's panicked face. The guests were frozen, forks halfway to mouths, champagne glasses suspended in midair. I saw the realization hit Caleb like a physical blow. He wasn't looking at a bride anymore. He was looking at the woman who had just dismantled his entire life in front of everyone who mattered. Elena, what is this? Mia's voice was a high-pitched squeak. She stepped forward, trying to grab my arm, but I stepped back, letting my heavy silk train slide away from her touch. This is just a misunderstanding. Caleb, tell her. It's a joke, right? Caleb didn't speak. His eyes were darting toward the garden exit, but the 2 detectives I'd hired, plainclothes officers who had been briefed on the forgery, were already standing by the stone archway. There was no back door to this truth. It's not a joke, Mia, I said, my voice amplified by the microphone, steady and cold. And it's certainly not a misunderstanding. I've seen the emails. I've seen the pre-listing for my grandmother's house. I've seen the loan applications Caleb forged with my signature to pay off his gambling debts. A murmur broke out among the guests. My Aunt Margaret gasped, and I saw Caleb's associates, the men he'd bragged were high-level investors, suddenly start looking at their shoes. They knew the game was up. Caleb finally found his voice, but it wasn't the voice of the man I loved. It was a low, ugly snarl. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Standing there in your expensive dress, looking down on everyone? I worked for you for 3 years, Elena. I played the part of the doting boyfriend while you spent every night staring at your blueprints. You owed me that house. You owed me for every hour I spent listening to you talk about your pathetic heritage. The mask hadn't just slipped, it had shattered. The Prince Charming was gone, replaced by a bitter, small-minded man who felt entitled to the fruits of a labor he never shared. I looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest disappeared. I felt light. I felt free. I don't owe you anything, Caleb, I said. But you do owe the bank. And the state. My lawyer, Mrs. Gable, stepped forward from the front row. She didn't look like a wedding guest. She looked like a shark in floral print. She handed a blue folder to the detectives, and then turned to Caleb. Mr. Sterling, she began, her voice cutting through the garden air. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Elena has placed the coastal estate and all her business assets into an irrevocable private trust. Even if you had managed to trick her into signing those joint property papers today, they would have been legally void. You were trying to steal a house that technically no longer belongs to an individual. It belongs to a legal entity you have no claim to. She then turned to my sister, who was trembling, her face blotchy and red. And as for you, Mia, since you used Elena's business credentials to help Caleb access sensitive financial data, you are being named as a co-conspirator in a corporate espionage and fraud suit. I suggest you both find very good lawyers, though I suspect you'll have trouble paying for them since Elena has also frozen the joint account you both were dipping into. Mia fell into one of the white rental chairs, sobbing into her hands. I only did it because I was broke, Elle. You have everything. You always have. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. We just wanted a head start. I walked over to her, looking down at the sister I had spent my life protecting. You didn't want a head start, Mia. You wanted to take the finish line I spent 10 years running toward. You didn't just betray my money. You betrayed the fact that I would have given you anything if you had just been honest. But you weren't. You chose a con artist over your own blood. I turned to the guests. I apologize for the disruption. There will be no wedding today. But as I said before, the food is paid for. Please, stay and eat. Consider it a celebration of a different kind. A celebration of clarity. The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights and hushed conversations. Caleb was escorted out in handcuffs, his investment friends disappearing into the night as soon as the police started asking questions. Mia was allowed to leave, but she left alone, her designer bridesmaid dress dragging through the dirt. I stayed. I didn't hide in the bridal suite. I took off my veil, kicked off my heels, and sat on the porch of my grandmother's house with Mr. Harrison, my father's old friend. Your father would have been proud of you today, Elena, he said, handing me a glass of water. Not because you caught them, but because you didn't let them turn you into someone bitter. It took a year for the dust to settle. Caleb was sentenced to 4 years for multiple counts of fraud and forgery. Mia tried to call me a dozen times, but I kept my distance. Forgiveness is a gift, and I wasn't ready to give it to someone who still hadn't taken responsibility for their actions. I finished the renovations on the estate. I didn't sell it. I turned the guest house into a studio for young female architects, a place where they could work without the fear of someone trying to steal their foundations. People often ask me if I regret that day. They ask if I wish I'd found out sooner so I could have avoided the expense and the public embarrassment of a failed wedding. My answer is always no. I needed to walk down that aisle. I needed to see their faces when they realized that a strong woman isn't just someone who earns a lot of money. She's someone who knows exactly what she's worth. We live in a world that often tells women to soften themselves, to trust blindly, and to feel guilty for their own success. But I've learned that the most important structure you will ever build isn't a house. It's the boundaries that protect your peace. Your success is not a joint asset for someone who hasn't put in the work. Your kindness is not a weakness to be exploited. And your intuition, that quiet voice in your gut that tells you something is wrong, that is the most powerful tool in your kit. Never ignore it. Have you ever felt like the people closest to you were more interested in your success than your soul? Have you ever had to tear down a relationship to save your own life? Tell me your story in the comments. Let's talk about how we rebuild.